Hey, it's Colleen.
Hi, it's Kate.
And it's Megan.
And we're the
Three Scheme Queens. Join us as we discuss popular hoaxes and give you our comedic take on what is fact and what is fiction. If you have a sense of humor and an open mind, come take this journey with us.
We'll tell you what we think, and we'll try to prove it to you.
Is this thing on?
Hey, guys.
Hi, guys.
Guys,
Hey.
today we're doing Coke.
Well, yes,
Our
but
moms are
also
gonna be so
we just
good.
had some really good BLTs.
Oh my God.
It was a team effort.
Megan is wifey.
Yeah, wife
She
her
made
up
bread.
out there.
Kate's already wifey, but she made bacon.
I do love bacon.
I cut a tomato
Bacon
And
Good for
peeled
me.
some lettuce.
and peeled some lettuce.
And sliced some
That,
avocado.
hey, that matters.
Yeah.
That matters.
That matters.
Yeah,
Yeah, I touched something green today.
yeah. And then she told us that if you boil avocado peels, it
It turns pink.
It turns pink, which
Yeah.
is interesting.
Hmm.
I would like to try that experiment.
Yeah, look it up.
Yeah, I believe you.
Should we tell everyone about our drink check?
Drink
Yeah, drink check.
So today we did like multiple drink checks.
We're gonna post it to the gram.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really funny. Today we tested all different Coke and Pepsi products.
We took the Pepsi challenge. Kate, do you remember the Pepsi challenge from back in the day?
The blind.
They used to say on the commercials, like, have you taken the Pepsi challenge?
Oh, that's why they say
Right.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was all because we're going to talk a whole bunch about it today. Okay.
Oh.
But interestingly, as a bunch of Diet Coke connoisseurs,
None of us got Diet Coke correct.
we bombed. Kate
Yeah.
did pretty good.
I
but
did pretty
she
good.
did not get them all right.
I flipped the
Megan
diets.
Got every single one wrong.
But you know what I'm going to say? I was trying to figure out how I really wanted a can of each. But I was like, how
Yeah.
can you get an individual can? So we got a bottle. I never drink out of a plastic bottle. And I feel like we all agree that that's the
the
worst.
bubbles were off
Yeah.
too.
It's the worst way to drink.
Drink it.
Yeah.
These sodas is out of a bottle
It's got to be glass or can.
or fountain. I mean,
Or
fountain.
fountain is the best.
Number
Yeah.
one is fountain. So I'm going to blame the plastic bottles. So we'll have to do it again. We'll have to do the one that people did like a year ago that was like, where's the Diet Coke from? Because I really feel like I could nail that.
Where's it
Sonic,
from?
Chick-fil-A, McDonald's.
And
Oh.
what's the other one they usually do?
I don't know, like Wendy's or something. I
Yeah,
don't know. But
Wendy's.
Well, Wendy's uses those like robot soda machines. I can taste that from a mile away.
Oh yeah. Well, I never think they taste as good.
I hate those ones.
Yeah.
well,
To me, the Coke always tastes.
It's like everything.
Oh no, the Diet Coke tastes like there's not enough Diet Coke syrup in it. It's just
that's why it's
water.
so good at McDonald's because they have a contract. It's like written legally how much like the syrup to carbonated water ratio, and it's transported in the frozen coils, right?
Oh my God.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, McDonald's has a lot behind their soda, and the diameter or the circumference of their straw is very.
It's
It's patent. Yeah.
Except I remember one time I went through the drive-thru for Diet Coke at McDonald's, and they gave me a paper straw, and that it only happened one time,
Feels wrong.
which is good because I'm like, if
A paper straw again, worse than plastic straws.
and we go to
So
Diet Coke,
annoying.
we go to McDonald's for the Diet Coke.
right,
If a paper straw is flying apart my mouth, what's the point?
right.
Literally.
Thank you.
Also, it's got to be a styrofoam cup
Also,
with some yummy ice.
not only were we unable to identify which was which drink, when asked what everyone's favorite was, not one of us picked Diet
Diet
Coke.
Coke.
No, I
Well-
Diet Pepsi.
I've been in my Coke
That's so
era again
embarrassing.
lately. I've been liking regular Coke.
Yeah, I've seen you've been drinking some
Yeah,
Coke
I like
recently.
regular Coke every once in a while.
I usually think regular Coke is too sweet, but it all tasted so sweet to me.
I just really honestly don't like the taste of regular Coke.
Oh,
I like the taste of Diet Coke.
you know what my
Me too.
favorite is
Yeah.
all time? Mexican Coke in a glass bottle.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's got the cane syrup.
so good.
Well, let's talk about Coke, okay?
Okay. Polar bears.
We're going to talk about the polar bears. We're going to talk about all these things. So let me get
Okay.
into it, okay?
Okay. Not Britney Spears.
Right.
No, that's Pepsi.
I know.
So Coca-Cola, established in 1886, has evolved into one of the world's most recognized beverage brands. Over its extensive history, the company has been at the center of various controversies and conspiracy theories.
Hmm.
Today, We're going to talk about some of those.
Okay.
Like that they put Coke in it.
Well, that's a real thing.
That's real.
Yes. And so let's start there. Let me start with the history. Let's go back to the interesting story of how Coca-Cola came to be. And I was going to ask you all what you had heard.
Coke. The powder.
Yeah. I knew it had Coke in it, but
Yeah.
you told me what.
But is that why they call it Coke?
It like wasn't cocaine in its pure form though, right? It was like Coke. It was from the plant.
Correct.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Do you know who invented Coca-Cola?
A polar bear.
Yeah,
In the North
Santa
Pole.
Claus.
You guys, we're gonna talk about the polar bears and Santa Claus, but the founder was a chemist.
Hmm.
Oh, I believe that.
That makes
Was it
sense.
like what's his name? Walter White? Breaking Bad?
Yeah.
It's actually a little bit.
Oh.
So
Walter Blue.
in the late 1800s,
1800s.
yes, this is all the way back to the 1800s. So in the 1800s, there was a kind of a push for like natural remedies, kind of like today, little anti-physician, anti-medication, pro-naturopath push.
Hmm.
So people were creating all these natural remedies and they were selling them. And one of these remedies was Vin Mariana.
Vin Mariana.
Yes, which is wine and cocaine.
Oh.
And it would cure any ailment if you took it. TID.
3 times a day.
3 times a day, have a glass of wine with some cocaine in it.
I mean,
Wow.
but like what ailments are we talking about?
Well, I think it goes back to our Big Pharma episode when Dr. Andrew talked about this, how like there was no regulation, but for example, if you give someone morphine, then no matter what they're going to feel good. So if they
That's
come to
true.
you with joint pain
know.
or with a cough or with a headache,
Have
and
a little cocaine with it.
when they get some morphine, they feel better. And this is the same thing. Like what? An upper and a downer, right? A little cocaine and wine together, and like you're gonna probably feel pretty good.
You're going to feel mellow, but energized
Energized.
enough to make it through the day.
Exactly.
You're going to feel no anxiety.
That's
Mhm.
crazy.
So John Pemberton was a chemist and
That's why I take my Lexapro, but drink a lot of coffee.
So John Pemberton was a chemist and a Confederate soldier, and he was wounded in a Civil War battle, and he was not supposed to survive. So they gave him a whole bunch of morphine, to like make him comfortable, and miraculously he did survive.
Did he get some vampire blood?
Maybe, but with a morphine addiction.
Yeah. Well,
So he's like, man, I really need to find a way to combat this morphine addiction.
right.
So he tries a little of this Vin Mariana, and guess what? It worked.
right.
Who'd have think it?
He's off the morphine. He feels fabulous. Just a little cocaine and
He's just
red
on
wine.
another
times a
another
day.
addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? I kind of, off the record, would love to taste cocaine and red wine.
He's off his morphine. He feels fabulous. So he's like, you know what? I'm a chemist. I feel like I could create my own version of Vin Mariana. So he creates French wine coca.
Right.
And this is the year 1885. Then
French wine coca. What
Yeah.
makes the difference?
it's just his own brand. Okay.
Everybody likes the smell of their own brand.
French brand.
So then,
she just tried to make a fart joke. It didn't make any sense.
okay, guys. So it's 1885.
1885.
Then came Prohibition. And he was forced to replace the wine with carbonated water.
Oh.
So now
It's
it's
just Coke and
Coke
carbonated water. What color is Coke?
correct.
White.
So now, though, we have cocaine and carbonated water, except now the taste isn't so great. So
Ew.
what's it need?
Sugar.
Sugar. Lots and lots of sugar. It also needed a new name because we
Oh.
can't call it wine when there's no wine in it, right? So they come up with the name Coca-Cola. We can actually thank
Cola.
Frank Robinson, who was John Pemberton's bookkeeper, for coming up with the name Coca-Cola by combining 2 main ingredients, the coca leaf and the cola nut. So that's cocaine and caffeine.
Oh, the
Okay.
cola nut. The cola nut. I think it's interesting that they paired it with the coca,
Uh-huh.
the coca plant, because the cola nut is a natural. It's also a natural stimulant. Interesting, like coca, like a coca plant is a natural stimulant too.
Caffeine.
Yeah, interesting, right?
So cocaine and caffeine, yeah.
Yeah, isn't that
Yeah.
interesting?
Yep. Cocaine remained an active ingredient until 1929. Also, interestingly, the distinct Coca-Cola logo, the script that we all know that is on our merch, if you
Yes.
If
Yeah.
you check out our merch.
Yeah.
That is a replication of how the bookkeeper, Frank Robinson, wrote Coca-Cola.
Oh.
But anyway, back to Pemberton. So he is selling his elixir at Jacob's Pharmacy because, these chemists, like, they write their little ingredients and they go down to the pharmacy with their little card and the pharmacist, like, fills it, right?
Right.
So he's selling his elixir at Jacob's Pharmacy, and they're selling about 9 glasses per day. And then the story gets very shady, and all the sources kind of tell a different variation of the story. But it sounds like Pemberton was not a great businessman, and he was having to sell off portions of the business to people, including Asa Candler.
Asa Candler.
But Asa Candler wanted 100% ownership. And John Pemberton is dying of cancer, so he sold the recipe to Asa Candler, who was a pharmacist, for $2,300, which is the equivalent of about $54,000 today.
Wow.
And then
That's not that much.
And then he left his remaining portion of the company to his only son, Charles Pemberton.
Charles Pemberton.
Charles Pemberton was also an addict. His drug of choice, opium.
Opium.
I don't understand. Why are people getting all these drugs?
Well, they didn't know they were bad.
So he and Asa really did not see eye to eye. And Charles Pemberton is like, I really just want complete ownership of Coca-Cola.
okay.
So he ends up buying Charles Pemberton out because again, Charles Pemberton just needs some money for his habit.
Right.
So for a whopping $300, Asa Candler becomes the sole owner of Coca-Cola.
So is $300 like a lot back then?
It was about $10,000,
Hmm.
but still.
That's a lot.
That's
Yeah,
decent
but I
amount.
feel like you probably could have held out for some more.
I mean, probably.
You're like the
But-
last remaining shareholder on this guy wants full ownership of the company. I feel like you could probably negotiate.
That's true. You're right. You're not wrong, Megan.
But also, no one knew how big Coca-Cola was going to become. So.
No. But think about that guy's vision.
Yeah. So Charles Pemberton suspiciously dies in 1894
Of course he does.
of an opium overdose.
Well, is that suspicious?
Could have predicted that. Yeah. I'm like,
And it just is very suspicious because, like, again, the whole way that this slow buyout came to be is, like, very shrouded in mystery.
Okay.
And there's accusations that Asa may have actually forged signatures in his attempt to buy up shares of the business.
Whoa.
And when Charles Pemberton finally died and was, like, out of the way, we know that Asa was relieved. And the way that Charles died was very suspicious.
How did he die?
June 23rd, 1894, he's found unconscious with a stick of opium by his side.
Oh.
And he dies 10 days later at Grady Hospital, Atlanta. So, unintentional overdose,
Oh.
intentional overdose, murder.
because Atlanta's the hot, because that's where the museum is. Yeah.
It's the headquarters of Coca-Cola. So then, in 1910, Asa Candler has all the older records of the company destroyed. Only the official records of the title were left intact.
Of course.
Whoa.
So it's just all people are like, did he somehow take this guy out in order to get his complete ownership? Did he just like want this guy out of the way? All very sus.
That is very sus. Does he have mob connections?
You know?
Oh.
He does go on to become a politician.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
You think they had Coke on the Titanic?
Coca.
Probably. Only.
Oh, for sure there was Coke on the Titanic. I
What?
feel like those people were partying so hard.
Like,
So here's what we can thank Asa Candler for. There's a lot we can thank him for when it comes to Coca-Cola. But him becoming the sole owner, he really transitioned this from like a quote medication
Mm-hmm.
to a refreshing drink. And
soda shop.
And he invested a ton of money in advertising, which was like pretty unheard of at that point. Like he was getting celebrities to, pose with.
He really had a
drink.
vision.
And yes.
Yeah.
So he was very cutting edge.
Okay.
In 1916, he was elected the Atlanta mayor and he passed management and stock to his children who eventually sold the company off. Okay. So that's the background. Kind of a shady background.
So
Yes.
you're
little
telling me
bit.
essentially Coke is like chocolate soda because it comes from cacao.
No,
No,
it's
it does
not
not come from cacao. You just wanted to say cacao.
What nut are you talking about?
It was the
cola nut.
Oh, I thought that was a cacao nut.
No, cola.
I didn't realize cola nut is a whole other nut.
Caffeine. And the
Which is coca is different from cacao.
yeah,
Yeah.
COCA. That is what like that cocaine is derived from.
And it's different from cacao.
And then you have a cola nut, which is what like caffeine is derived from.
Oh.
Yes, cola nuts are a source of caffeine.
So that was kind of the suspicious history, but let's get into the conspiracy theories.
Oh,
all right?
yes, please.
Yeah.
Give me this conspiracy theories.
So here's
Right.
the biggest one.
'Kay.
New Coke.
New Coke.
Have you heard of it?
Like what we're drinking nowadays?
Nope. As I referenced earlier, the Pepsi challenge. You might be too young, Colleen, but
Right.
this used to be the commercial was like, have you taken the Pepsi challenge? And they were pitching that in blind taste tests, consumers actually preferred Pepsi. And I literally
Interesting.
wrote, I cannot believe this is true. And yet we
kinda
failed
proved
today.
it
we just
today.
proved the
That's
Pepsi.
wild.
Yeah. So Coca-Cola is like, I can't believe that Pepsi is really preferred by the public. So they ran their own taste tests and again, verified these findings that people preferred the taste of Pepsi over Coke. Coca-Cola is on the decline. So we have Pepsi and Coke, which it also sounds like Pepsi has tried to sell to Coke for over a century. They've like offered to sell, and Coke doesn't want to like buy up Pepsi.
Right.
Really?
So we really just have these two competitors, right? We just have Pepsi and Coke.
That's surprising.
And Coke is on the decline. And so they're like, okay, how are we going to like, revitalize Coca-Cola? So in 1985, they created a new formula, which they say performed better than Coke and Pepsi in over 200,000 blind taste tests. So if people had the option of Coke, Pepsi, or New Coke,
They pick Pepsi.
they all picked no.
Oh.
They all picked New Coke over the Coca-Cola that we know and love.
Okay.
Okay. That was such a call.
Yeah.
Now, the Coca-Cola Company, 1985, 100 years old, okay?
100
Coca-Cola has been
years.
around for 100 years.
That's wild to me.
They release New Coke and chaos ensued.
Of course.
Yes. They were inundated with letters. They got about 5,000 calls a day. There were protests about New Coke. Why are you messing with Coca-Cola?
Okay.
I believe it.
Gay Mullins was founder of an organization called Old Cola Drinkers of America. And he spent $30,000 to help convince Coke to bring back the original cola.
Bring back
Interesting.
cola.
He said that New Coke was un-American and said, quote, they have taken away my freedom of choice.
Well,
Because this all kind of goes to how they have advertised so much that like Coca-Cola is like a symbol of
America.
America.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So New Coke hasn't even come out. They're just like, hey, we're launching a new recipe, and people lose their minds.
Okay.
79 days into this marketing,
Scheme.
Right.
yeah, they cave and they're like, okay, we're not going to get rid of old Coke.
What did New Coke taste like?
Well,
What's
I'm
the
gonna-
conspiracy here?
I'm getting to it.
Okay.
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 Well, I'm going to answer both your questions. Okay. So 79 days, they cave in. They say, okay, we're not going to get rid of old Coke.
Okay.
And as soon as they say this, they start getting all of like inundated with positive letters. They get calls thanking them. Sales are booming. So the conspiracy here is, and I haven't finished the story of what happened with New Coke and Old Coke yet,
Okay.
but the theory is that when they say, you know what, you're right, we're not going to get rid of Old Coke, sales go wild. So the conspiracy theory is, was this all a pre-planned gimmick? Was this all a marketing tool because Coke was dying off?
To get
And by saying, we're going to take away your Coke, everyone lost their mind. And then all of a sudden they start buying up Coke.
well, I think it shows
I
that
do kinda
people
believe
liked
that.
Coke.
But people didn't like Coke because they preferred Pepsi when they did a
Well,
taste test.
But then by threatening to take it away,
That's the point.
Exactly. It really goes all back to the fact that the advertising has hit us all right in the...
well, if they were mad about them taking it away, they clearly liked it to begin with.
But when they blind taste tested, they didn't like it.
But people were buying it.
Yes, because we have like emotional connections to it. But anyway, the whole conspiracy theory is that Coca-Cola was never going to launch
it
this
away.
new Coke, that it was all just a marketing gimmick. Well, that's not true. Because people are like, was this the dumbest mistake they ever made, or was it the most genius strategy?
Like, should
ever?
they have released New Coke?
Well, they did release New Coke because they were this, which is kind of what I think proves that this is not really some big conspiracy to help, the Coca-Cola brand.
Right.
They said, okay, we're going to keep old Coke, but we're still going to roll out New Coke because they were so convinced that if people just tried New Coke,
They would
They
like
would
it.
like it better.
They would like it
Is
better.
it Diet Coke?
No. So they say, we're going to release new Coke and old Coke. You have your choice. You get to pick. And they were like, and watch, you guys are going to want new Coke.
Okay.
But New Coke was not it.
And
Okay.
they release it, and it's a flop.
Oh.
They ended up having to pull new Coke from the market because it just wasn't selling.
What did it taste
Wow.
like?
But also interestingly, again, we do know that in the blind taste test, people did prefer the new Coke over both Pepsi and the OG Coke, but people still wanted that old Coke. In the end, this cost Coca-Cola $4 million, this whole like rollout. But think of how much money they made and that they revitalized their
That's true.
their
They
company.
revitalized their brand.
So I don't think this was a big conspiracy. I think this was just a big flub that actually happened to work in their benefit in the end. Okay. But you want to know what the real difference was between new Coke and old Coke.
Dying.
So the difference was, so cane sugar, here's really what it came to. There was this whole, it was a whole screw up with the Coca-Cola contracts.
Yep.
And that they had a contract for the sugar, but they didn't account for like increased inflation and costs and everything.
Okay.
And so they were locked into this to this sugar deal
Okay.
that was going to lose them money. And so actually their transition to the high fructose corn syrup, which did test better, was also like a financial
Yeah. High
perk to
fructose
that.
corn
it's going
syrup
to be
is
so
cheap.
much cheaper.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why it's in everything.
Yes. Between the old Coke and the new Coke, they were trying to transition to this high fructose corn syrup from cane sugar because it was cheaper
Right.
because of this bad deal they made. And the big difference, they decided the reason people preferred Pepsi over Coke, the classic Coke, old Coke, was because Pepsi was a sweeter drink. So they wanted to make a sweeter drink. So they adapted the recipe to make it sweeter.
Okay.
And that was the new Coke they released, but people still preferred the old Coke because while we might enjoy a sip, we don't want to drink a whole can of the
Yeah,
sweet.
Yes.
Okay. Kate, tell us about high fructose corn syrup.
High fructose corn syrup is made with corn,
Which we can't digest.
allegedly. And it's very cheap to make, therefore it's cheap to sell. And a lot of people have replaced actual sugar in products
With corn.
with this corn syrup, and it's like not good for you.
Corn.
Isn't it like there's a direct correlation between diabetes and
High fructose
high
corn
fructose
syrup.
corn syrup like being used in our products?
I wouldn't know the exact data, but I wouldn't be shocked if that was what
And
it
this
shows.
is why I get confused why everyone's so upset about like we need to like revamp the food industry. I'm like, yes, we do, but also like I understand that it's like gonna cost money.
So my thing with Coke versus Pepsi, I also judge a book by its cover, and I just like the look of Coke.
Well, we're going to talk about that.
You definitely judge a book by its cover.
Yeah, it's got the vintage feel.
It does have a vintage feel.
I
You're
love
right.
what the glass Coke bottles look like.
Mm.
I'm attracted to the red more than the blue. Like the font
Attractive.
is
What is it like?
attractive.
You know what? I've got some news for you, Colleen.
What's that?
You
Although I love a
Have-
90s Pepsi vibe.
have fallen victim to the wild marketing scheme that is Coca-Cola.
Well, and I don't deny it.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk to you about some of that, about why it hits us like, look at this classic
Yeah.
and the emotions it evokes in us. Okay?
But I will say, I just don't like modern day marketing for Pepsi. I think it's not as catchy. But if you look at the 1990s Pepsi vibes, I'm into that.
Okay, so we'll circle back to that. Okay, so that's like the big conspiracy when you're like the Coke conspiracy is that people are like 1985 there was this whole new Coke thing and it was all just a scam and they were never gonna like actually release this new Coke, but it was a publicity stunt. And I think that's not the case. It was a flub. All right, but we have some other conspiracy theories that are
Okay.
smaller. One of them is regarding the New World Order. So
Ooh.
they say that large
I
corporations
truly believe there's a new world order.
The reptilian humanoids.
I don't think they're reptilian.
That's the whole conspiracy.
No, there's multiple conspiracies about a new world order, but reptilian humanoids are part of one. 10%.
Okay, so there's the New World Order theory, which alleges that large corporations like Coca-Cola play a role in controlling the global governments, economies, and populations.
Well, I believe that.
And according to this theory, their global reach and dominance in the beverage industry are seen as evidence of a corporate conspiracy to control people. And let me tell you about some of the sketchy things they've done in order to grow as a company.
Ooh.
Do you remember when we did our Hitler episode and we talked about the creation, how Coca-Cola created Fanta? And perhaps that helped to kind of fund the war. We talked about this a little bit. So the deal was Coca-Cola was really advertising as like the soda for the troops, right? The drink for the troops. And it was so American. But then there were sugar rations put in place. And Coca-Cola said, wait, we are a wartime necessity. We should be exempt because
No, right.
they were energizing the troops.
I believe that.
Right.
I mean,
honestly.
they deserve their sugary drink.
They were helping with morale. And I'm here for that.
A cigarette and a Coke.
And since they had spent so much money on lobbying, they won. So
Mm.
government's like, you know what? Yeah, sugar rations for everyone except you, Coca-Cola.
Dang.
I will say, as a hospital employee who feels like I was just
Bring
in a war in the last decade,
Yeah.
Diet Coke was 100% a wartime necessity.
It was.
Yeah.
We needed that.
I will say, in the true war zone I was in,
You had Coke?
no, we had Rippets,
What the heck is Rip It?
energy drinks.
Oh my God.
What is a rip it?
It's like they come in these cans of Spig, but they're energy drinks.
Oh, I'm thinking Whippets.
Like
no,
what,
like-
the drugs that people
Yeah, like the drugs.
they do in prison. Okay, so Coca-Cola also made a deal that any soldier anywhere can buy a Coke for 5 cents. And up front, this is the loss. But people supported Coca-Cola because they're like, if you're a patriot, you buy Coke.
Right.
You support Coca-Cola. So then Coca-Cola is like, well, we should set up some plants in Europe because, you know, we got troops all over the place. And they got government funding to help them set up these plants in Europe.
Whoa.
Iconic.
Your tax dollars, well, not ours because we weren't alive, but it would have been today. Your tax dollars paying for these Coca-Cola plants, okay?
Wow.
64 bottling plants opened during the war. Fun fact, do you know the only 2 countries in the world that you cannot buy Coca-Cola right now?
Russia.
China. Oh, wait, hold on.
Okay, let's think of one closer to home.
Mexico.
Mexico.
Who
Talking about Mexican Coke?
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm confused.
Canada. No. Puerto Rico. No. What's the one?
Get close.
Cuba. Cuba.
And there's one more.
North Korea.
Bingo.
Oh.
So
Yeah. That makes sense, actually, because we can't get in. Americans can't get in.
when they're expanding all over the place, they were also trying to target other customers, right? Like maybe the Nazis.
Oh, getting them to drink Coke?
They want anyone to drink Coke who's going to drink Coke.
That seems to
They
be
literally had advertisements with swastikas on them. Yeah. The war progressed.
How did they fund plants?
You know what? They're lucky social media wasn't a thing back in.
Yeah, because if people found out that they were both making us pay for the soldiers' Coke and the Nazis' Coke.
Well, I don't know if we were paying. Well, I guess we were in the sense that we paid for the bottling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
That's crazy.
and they were targeting the Nazi Germany youth, and we're going to talk shortly about how Coca-Cola targets the youth. Okay. So then the war progressed, and multinational corporations were cut off from distributing to Germany. So what did Coca-Cola do? They said, okay, we need to figure out how we can like manufacture a beverage in Germany for the Germans to buy. So they used all of their fruit. Again, we briefly touched on this in our previous episode, but they used leftover fruit and they created Fanta,
Oh,
which became the only soda available to Germans,
I thought Fanta was a Pepsi company.
and it blew up.
Fanta's a Coke company?
Um,
Fanta's huge in Europe.
you know what else? You know who they had producing the Fanta
Who?
for the Coca-Cola company to sell to the Nazis
Who?
and the other Germans?
Who?
The victims in the concentration camps.
Oh
Of
my
course
God.
they did.
Fanta's huge.
So Coca-Cola is the American beverage, but you know,
Kind of like,
dark
Maybe.
past.
Oh, that's crazy.
I'd really like to bury this, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And then more recently, they tried to expand outside of soda because they were getting flack for contributing to obesity, which again we're going to talk about in just a second. So they decided they're going to start selling water and under the Coca-Cola brand, which would
Dasani.
be Dasani.
Ew, the worst bottled water.
So interesting that you say that
It
because
tastes so gross.
I think it's good.
they were accused it was discovered,
Mm-hmm.
they were literally bottling tap water
Yeah.
and selling it.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
It's disgusting.
Maybe that's why I'm fine with tap water.
They just recently changed though.
What there was like there
Yeah.
was like an infectious outbreak or whatever, and then there's also a little bit of drama. Like in Guatemala, there were some plant workers who were making $15 a day, and they unionized, and then the union leaders were kidnapped, murdered, and attacked. But Coke says, "Listen, that's just an independent plant. We don't own that plant, so we have no part in this." But
That's crazy.
dark past. Okay, you mentioned earlier Santa.
Yeah. They always do a Christmas can.
Baby.
Have you guys heard that Coca-Cola may be responsible for creating
Santa.
the imagery of Santa that we know?
For real? Not the Germans? The
Real.
Holland?
Yeah, no.
What are those people?
It was a pagan holiday first, St.
Well,
Nicholas.
But what does St. Nicholas look like?
But if you look
He's
at
a
old
peddler.
pagan pictures,
Let me
he's
tell
got a white beard.
He's a peddler.
Let me give you the facts, guys.
He filled wooden shoes.
So
St. Nicholas.
I thought that was in Holland, not Germany.
Coca-Cola is a refreshing summer drink, right?
Right.
But then it gets cold in the winter. And how are we going to get people to drink Coke? Well, we're going to do a whole
Don't
Santa
put Santa
Claus
in.
advertisement. Okay. You are correct. Father Christmas, Santa Claus, it's been around for centuries. But prior to the 1800s, he was depicted as a thin elf-like man in green, sometimes like a tall, gaunt figure. 1823, 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, was written and released, and it described Santa as a, quote,
I could probably tell you from memory.
Chubby with red
A right
cheeks.
jolly old elf
it described him as chubby and plump.
who laughed. His belly shook like a bowl full of jelly. He was joyful and something, a right happy old elf. And I laughed when he something in spite of myself.
So these are really the first depictions of him as being like a jolly round fellow. Prior to that, he was a
Really?
tall, scrawny, elf-like
Whoa.
figure. So in 1931, Coca-Cola commissions Hayden Sundblom to paint Santa for their Christmas advertisements. And this is where we see the warm, happy, rosy-cheeked, bearded, jolly fella. Because he said he used 'Twas the Night Before Christmas as his inspiration.
Mm.
There is a lot of people, like when you go on Reddit, people fight back and forth about this. Like, is this real? Did Santa, did Coca-Cola really create the Santa character that we know? And that's, like, before that, there was no jolly man with a big belly and a red coat.
What was the year that they did this?
1930s. I think Coke probably had a big impact for the marketing of Santa. I don't think they envisioned the Santa
Well, so again, I think, yes, if you go back into the late 19th, early 20th century art, you will see depictions of a chubby man in a red suit, but you also see a lot of him in a green suit.
Yes, yeah.
Sometimes he looks very scary.
the classic
He's
Santa.
very tall and scrawny. And it was not until, yes, the 1930s that we all kind of just, now we all think of Santa and we see the same image, right?
Yes, okay.
This guy in a red outfit with a big belly and a beard.
Yeah.
That's thanks to
That's Santa.
Coca-Cola.
Right.
That is so interesting to me. A green suit. Why would he
Well,
be
he's-
wearing green?
How about Coca-Cola brainwashing the children?
About sugar?
Well, let's talk about that. So some people believe that the company deliberately targets children with ads and promotions to create lifelong consumers, claiming that the company exploits children's developing tastes and preferences for long-term profit. There's not really a conspiracy, like there's not really a question here because it's true. Coca-Cola pays schools for exclusive rights. So they say, we'll pay you $3,000, $1 per student, to only sell Coca-Cola products in your vending machines. And then Coca-Cola gets all the money from the students who are purchasing from the vending machines, right? So there is a bit of a scam, like targeting children.
Right.
Did you have any Coca-Cola toys back in the day?
No.
I had a white polar bear with a scarf, just like the Coca-Cola ads.
I don't think I had any.
No, I don't think I had any.
The point is,
Where did you get him?
I probably got him from like the Scholastic book.
Oh,
somewhere.
not from. I was thinking maybe he would be like a McDonald's,
Yeah, I was like, maybe a
Happy-
McDonald's meal
Happy
toy.
toy.
I'm just saying, how can Coca-Cola say they don't target kids when they're creating
Toys.
toys for kids?
I mean,
So Coca-Cola says, quote, We do not target our advertising to children under the age 13 anywhere in the world. We are committed to not marketing any of our products, regardless of nutritional profile, to children under the age of 13 and in media where 30% or more of the audience is composed of children under 13. Our responsible marketing policy clearly states that we will respect the role of parents and caregivers by not marketing directly to children under 13. But we have reports from organizations like the Center for Science and the Public Interest that find that the company's marketing practices are inconsistent with this pledge, that we have Coca-Cola products being prominently featured in the media, including TV shows and movies that are watched by children, that Coca-Cola is sponsoring events for children, like road races for kids, toy licensing, and mini can zones in public parks, and that they create videos and content for online platforms that are appealing to young children.
I just think online things is interesting because we don't limit kids' access to the internet. So it's like they might be innocently trying not to market to children, but it's children are on the internet. Like you can't control who goes on the internet.
Yeah, but they should have like people drinking Coke products in like a kids' TV show.
I can't name one kid show where they're drinking name brand products.
Honestly, as a person here with children, I would have to agree that they do not market towards anyone younger than 13. My kids only know what soda is because the only thing that they really know is Diet Coke.
Yeah.
That's it. They don't really know it. And Sprite, because we went on vacation and I'd let them have a Sprite one time. But like we don't keep soda in the house. So
not like on the shows they're watching.
All right.
Yeah, so I would have to agree with Coca-Cola.
Yeah. Okay.
But I do remember watching like Nickelodeon, which arguably could be a kid's.
Yeah.
And they had Sprite commercials when I was a kid.
And like
it was like basketball players opening a Sprite, but with kids playing basketball, and it was like refreshing. That was a Sprite commercial. It was like, it's so refreshing.
That would be, I think, the only way I could see them really market is through athletes.
But yeah, but I mean, I remember having a vending machine in school.
Yeah.
We had a vending machine, not marketing.
But you were older than 13.
And they actually had it. They had.
How old are you when you go to middle school?
You're 14 when you go to high school.
They had mine shut off during the school day. You couldn't access this drink. It was only Gatorade, though.
Well, the reason that it matters whether or not they're targeting to children is because there are theories that Coca-Cola could be used as a form of mind control in the sense that the combination of caffeine, sugar, and other ingredients creates addictive properties that cause people to come back. So again, if you can get people addicted young, then it's like a cigarette, right? You got a lifelong.
I mean, I would agree, but like, can't you like?
You could argue that to any.
Yeah, to anything.
Like Mountain Dew, I feel like has a bigger problem than Coke does.
Mountain Dew. I feel like nobody drinks Mountain Dew.
Oh my God. I feel like most of Middle America drinks Mountain Dew.
And it kind of ties into the larger conspiracy that the food and beverage industry is manipulating consumer behavior for profit. Again, I think really what I learned in my research of Coca-Cola was that I think they are being more manipulative with their marketing than their actual product, because they actually have Coca-Cola has an entire lab built with like faux shopping aisles where they can determine like how can we best get someone who's just walking down the aisle to grab a Coca-Cola product. They have like fake cafeteria set up where they can just be like, how can we? And I think the way that how you're like, I just love a classic Coke. It just feels so like a classic Coke in a red can, right? And in a red bottle. And we're thinking like, and it's the all-American drink because you have these, war vets drinking their Coca-Cola, and it just seems like it's all been more of which kind of goes into how Coca-Cola loses the Pepsi challenge, and people keep coming back because it's not just about the taste and the flavor. It's about how we have been manipulated by the advertisement and the media. And again, how Coca-Cola was like really pretty advanced, that they were the first people who were really advertising like this.
I just think they're good marketing. Like, I don't think there's something wrong with being adapting your marketing skills and using that to your own company's business. But
yeah, I agree. I think that marketing, I mean, isn't part of marketing.
It is manipulation, I guess.
Well, but isn't part of marketing studying like the way you attract people's attention and like moving with marketing trends is like you study the new psychology of the brain. Isn't that part of marketing? Like,
Yeah.
so that's actually smart. Like they have good marketers.
And probably
They do.
smart.
But should they be more open about the effects of sugar on the body?
so
I don't know if that's their job to tell you that.
I'm all disorganized, but let me tell you, let me finish up with this about the effects on your body, okay?
Right.
Because the final thing is that Coca-Cola is getting some hate. This goes into the big conspiracy again that they're just like, we're advertising to kids and we're not telling them about the addictive properties and how, you know, the sugar and the caffeine is going to release dopamine and we're going to keep coming back for more. But even worse, you know, we're talking a lot now about childhood obesity and about, you know, the health ramifications. We definitely we did a deep dive in Diet Coke on aspartame. And hey, guys, go check it out because
we figured out some stuff.
we think it's okay.
Yeah, we're
Pro Diet Coke.
yeah.
Pro aspartame. So if you were afraid to listen because you were afraid that we were going to hate on Diet Coke, don't worry. But Coca-Cola has disclosed that it has spent a significant amount of money on scientific research and health and well-being partnerships, including funding for organizations like the American Cancer Society, the American College of Cardiology, and the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And they have funded this research that has come out to downplay the role of sugary drinks in obesity and focus. It says obesity is completely caused by an energy balance model, meaning, you know, just in calories in versus calories out, right? So these studies that they have funded have said like, oh, you're obese, well then you need to do more physical activity, and that's it. And so like, well, it's interesting that this study is like, oh, it's not because people are drinking too much sugar or people are drinking too many chemicals in their drinks or anything. It's purely because they need to move more. So it's kind of like we're going with like they're funding research that is saying we're not the problem, but how accurate is that research if they're funding it?
Right. That is like major bias in the research.
Exactly.
And I hope that those articles, like, you know, in every research article, you're supposed to put, these are my potential biases.
Yeah, you start with your conflict of interest.
Yep.
Kate, what do you think about that?
The more we study about metabolism, the more we realize we don't really understand it. I think that's like, and I think that like calories in versus calories out is a very elementary way of describing like how to lose weight versus how to like gain weight. But also, I think we know from like, you know, late 90s, early 2000s that calorie in and calorie out just like doesn't compute in the long run, because, you know, for a long time we have people, women specifically, who have just completely restricted their calorie intake like severely. Like these, what was it, 1,200 calories? Like you should eat 1,200 calories a day, which is like the average 2-year-old should get a 1,200 calorie diet. But they were having women like do these 1,200 calorie diets, and then now we are seeing this like epidemic in women where we've basically like messed up our metabolisms because we've been told forever like calories in versus calories out. But what we don't realize is that like our bodies have protective mechanisms. Our bodies are always trying to like find your homeostasis. And so your homeostasis is like your safe point or your set point. And so there's also this whole theory that your body is always trying to like strive for a set quote weight that it feels safest at. And so with all of that to say, calories in versus calories out is a very convoluted way of explaining weight gain versus weight loss.
It's just a much more complicated system.
Much more complicated than that, because it goes into your body habitus and your muscle mass and the types of food you're eating and how you're fueling your body, and then how often you're fueling your body with the same amount of calories every day. Like,
just back to the original question was just that, is it as simple as
no, clearly
go
by my 20-minute
if you're drinking 6
answer.
Cokes a day and you're not achieving your weight goals, and it must be because you need to go out and
walk more, you know.
and that it's a little more complicated than that. But interesting that the studies that are saying that are funded by Coca-Cola
Right.
don't want you to stop drinking 6 Cokes a day.
Right.
So that's just kind of another.
But it's also like up to you as the consumer to know how much sugar is in the Coke. Like, I don't think the company has, like, they'll put the data out. Like, if you're going to drink 6 Cokes, you should know that you're drinking that much sugar. It's up to you to read it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think Coke should be blamed for people drinking sugary drinks. You're the one not reading your ingredients and drinking it.
Yeah, I mean,
You know what I mean? Like,
well, that just goes back to like no one wants to be
Accountable.
accountable
yeah.
for the things they're doing.
Well, that's fair.
So
Accountable. But
yeah, I mean, I think that like if you enjoy, this is the thing, like everything has become so much more accessible. Like if you think about it, back in the 30s when Coke was like, you know, a thing, you would go to your local drugstore or pharmacy and then you'd sit at the counter and you'd get a Coke.
Well, yeah.
You'd get one Coke and you'd go home and it would be a special treat that you got
yeah,
while you
it's
were
not
out.
like every day.
And it wasn't as accessible as it is like now in the grocery stores. Like,
Well, you're right. And then we talk about, you know, initially, now we have cans and bottles, which a whole other thing, right? But like initially, when these pharmacists and chemists were creating Coca-Cola, it was, yeah, like you're describing, like purely a fountain beverage. They
Right.
they manufactured the syrup and the people had to mix it. And so like, yeah, you're not just at home cracking a Diet Coke every
it would
time
be
you want one.
Like a soda shop.
Yeah. And like,
Right.
You would go to the soda
pharmacy,
shop.
The pharmacy would sell 9 Cokes a day.
Yeah.
And it was people who walked in and purchased their Coke and drank it.
right.
And then, yes, I think, and then, you know, in the early 20th century, early to mid 20th century, I guess early, yeah, then they got the contract for the bottling companies. And
Right.
they started bottling it. And then, you know, then I don't even know when, probably 70s or so, I'm guessing, is when we started getting cans, right?
Yeah.
So then we have cans, and you're right. So it probably definitely was a difference from like a sweet treat that gives us these memories from our childhood, you know, or the older generation, childhood memories of going to the soda shop like you're talking about,
Right.
having this special treat, to now just being like yeah, I mean, I'm a big Diet Coke drinker now, and just like cracking a Diet Coke every day when I
Right.
feel like I want one.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
there's a-
Drink at your own risk.
But anyway, that was I really did think the new Coke, old Coke thing was interesting. And I do see a lot of people talking about Santa. So that was interesting to read about. Did Coca-Cola develop Santa? But those are the conspiracy theories I found. So any thoughts, guys?
I like my Diet Coke.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently you like your Diet Pepsi better.
No, I liked Coke. Full Coke.
Oh, that's
better.
right. Full Coke.
I like full Coke. I like both. I go in between.
And what did you, Kate?
I chose Diet Pepsi.
She chose Diet Pepsi.
Yeah.
Megan chose.
I don't even know.
I don't even know.
I don't think I chose.
You didn't choose a favorite. You just were like.
kind of felt, again, as I mentioned, the bottles were throwing me off, and I felt like I needed, like at a wine tasting, you know, you need like a
Yeah, I
palate
needed a
cleanser.
cleanser.
I needed a cracker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I feel that. I feel that.
We'll have to do it again.
Yeah, we'll try again. Well, Colleen wants to organize one with like the different types of Cokes.
Yeah,
right?
like lime Coke, caffeine-free Coke.
Lime. You can't tell the difference between lime Coke and
You know what? We're gonna do it, and we'll see. We'll see. It's subtle. Caffeine-free Coke, Diet Coke,
I
Coke
don't like
Zero.
caffeine-free Coke.
We should do a test.
I
to
don't
see
think
if we
I've
can figure
tasted
it out.
caffeine-free Coke.
Caffeine-free Diet Coke. I mean, what's the point? Not that there's that much caffeine.
It still has sugar though. It just doesn't have
Yeah.
caffeine.
Any
But
type
if you
of
have
caffeine.
Diet
What's the point?
caffeine-free Coke. What's the point?
I don't think they make diet caffeine.
They do.
Oh, I thought it was either caffeine-free or diet.
No. They make Diet caffeine-free Coke.
The little gold ones.
Yeah.
Guys, just a reminder, don't forget to check out our Facebook and Instagram pages at 3 Scheme Queens. That's the number 3 Scheme Queens, all one word. We're also on Reddit, same username. If you want to check out our website, go to 3schemequeens.com and you can find links to our social media accounts, our Buzzsprout page, all of our episodes, additional content, our contact page, and our discussion board where you can engage with us and share any updates on the topics that we have discussed. Let us know how we're doing and what you want to hear next. There are also opportunities to financially support us. There are links to buy us a cup of coffee, links to our recently updated merch store, and affiliate links. And as always, if you choose not to financially support us, we appreciate the follows, the downloads, listens, the likes. Kate, what should the people do?
Send this to 3 Coke lovers.
Yeah. What?
Whether that's the drink or the powder. Send it to them.
And then
know what to say.
and then
And then
scroll on down.
Okay.
Leave us a 5-star review. Leave
bet
us
that was
a
funny.
comment. Share us with your friends and family on your group chat and interact with us on social media at 3 Scheme Queens. Instagram handle.
All right. Well, we will see you next
See you next
See you next Tuesday.